I used to believe that success was everything. I had this idea in my head, shaped by years of watching people around me, reading articles, and hearing advice from mentors: get the job, get the money, get the house, and everything else will fall into place. I thought that was the secret. I thought that was the formula for happiness. I had it all planned out. I was working in a decent corporate job, making good money, and Emily was my perfect partner. We had an apartment in a nice part of the city, we traveled a bit, and we were slowly working towards our future together. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable. I thought, this is it. This is the life I worked for. But as time went on, I started to feel something shifting inside me. It wasn't anything huge at first. Just this small sense that something was missing. I told myself it was normal. The job was stressful, life was busy, and honestly, I wasn't the type to sit and think about feelings. I was always taught to just push through, work harder, keep climbing. That's how you get what you want, right? But somewhere along the way, I began to feel like I was suffocating. I was so wrapped up in what I was supposed to be doing, climbing that corporate ladder, working late, making more money, that I stopped paying attention to what was really important. I'd come home after a long day of meetings, emails, and numbers, and Emily would be sitting there, asking how my day went. And I'd tell her it was fine, just like I always did. But I wasn't really there. My mind was still on the next project, the next meeting, the next opportunity. She deserved better than that, but I convinced myself that I was doing it for us. If I could just make more money, if I could just get promoted again, I'd finally be the man she needed me to be. It's funny looking back, because I really thought I was on the right track. I thought I was playing by the rules, and if I followed the path I was on, I would be happy. I mean, I had everything I thought I needed: a solid job, a loving partner, stability. Isn't that what everyone tells you to aim for? So, why wasn't I happy? Why did I feel like something was still missing? I kept telling myself I'd figure it out. I'd push through the doubt. But the truth was, I wasn't just doubting the job or the life I had, I was doubting myself. Every time I saw someone else moving ahead, getting their big break, or achieving something I hadn't yet, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. Am I doing enough? Is this all there is? What if I'm not enough for Emily? I had built this belief bubble around myself, thinking that if I just kept grinding, everything would eventually work out. But inside that bubble, I started feeling like I was losing touch with who I really was. I wasn't the person I used to be, the guy who had time for the things that mattered, the one who could laugh with Emily over nothing. The one who didn't just measure success by the amount of zeros on a paycheck. But I didn't know how to get out of that bubble. And the more I tried to push through, the more I became trapped. I didn't know it then, but the real struggle wasn't about climbing higher in my career. It was about facing the truth about myself. And that truth was, I was sacrificing everything for something that didn't even bring me the happiness I thought it would. That's when I began to feel the cracks in everything: my job, my relationship, and most of all, in myself. The deeper I got into that belief bubble, the more I realized how suffocating it was. It wasn't the success I was after anymore. It was a need to find a way to just breathe again. When I met Emily, it felt like a dream come true. She was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. I thought I had finally found the balance between love and success. She made me feel seen, like I had finally arrived at a place where I could truly be myself. I pictured our life together, married, a house, maybe kids someday. It all seemed so simple. For a while, everything felt perfect. We spent so much time together, laughing, talking about the future, planning our lives. I thought, this is it. This is what I've been working for. I had everything I needed. Or so I thought. But the more I got wrapped up in my job, the more things started to shift. I'd come home late, barely able to hold a conversation with her. And she'd be waiting for me, tired and disappointed. I'd promised it would be different tomorrow, but it never was. I kept saying, I'm doing this for us, I'm doing this for our future. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The work was never ending, and the more I pushed myself, the less I was present with her. I started thinking, If I can just get that promotion, if I can just bring in more money, we'll be set. I'll finally be able to relax, and we can really enjoy life together. But the harder I worked, the more distant I became. I thought that if I could just prove myself, everything would fall into place. But it didn't. Emily, she didn't need more stuff. She needed me. She needed my time. But I was too busy chasing something else. At first, everything felt easy. Emily and I were in that honeymoon phase where nothing seemed like a problem. We laughed, we dreamed, and I thought, this is it, we're building something special. But slowly, the reality of our lives started to creep in. My job was demanding more of my time, and the things that used to feel natural, like spending time with Emily, started feeling forced. It wasn't just about being busy anymore. It was like I was living in two worlds, one where I was climbing up the corporate ladder, and one where I was trying to be a good partner. But the two worlds didn't fit together anymore. And Emily could see it. She started to notice when I wasn't really present. She asked me how my day went, and instead of talking about it, I just brushed it off, always thinking about the next meeting or the next deadline. She didn't say anything at first. I think she was trying to understand. But then one evening, she finally said it. She looked at me with those tired eyes and just said, "Mark, I feel like you're here, but you're not really here." And that hit me harder than anything anyone had ever said. Because I knew she was right. I could feel the distance growing between us, and I didn't know how to fix it. I thought, I'm doing this for us. I'm doing this to secure our future. Why doesn't she see that? But the truth was, she wasn't asking for more things. She wasn't asking for a bigger house, or for me to get that promotion. She was asking for me. And I kept telling myself I'd give her that later. But the longer I kept putting it off, the more the gap between us widened, and then it started to feel like the love I thought was so solid was now something fragile. I couldn't help but wonder, is this what I really want? The more I tried to juggle everything, the more I started to feel like I was failing at both. At work, I was putting in the hours, but I was exhausted, mentally drained. I kept pushing through because that's what I was taught to do, right? Keep going, never stop. Success is just around the corner if you don't quit. But the harder I worked, the more things started to fall apart at home. I couldn't seem to make her happy anymore. No matter what I did, it felt like I was always falling short. The promotions, the raises, they didn't matter to Emily. And yet I kept thinking, if I just do this one more thing, if I can just make enough money, everything will be okay. I'll have proof I can do it. And she'll understand why I've been so distant. But the truth is, I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for me. For some idea in my head that if I achieved enough, I'd finally feel good enough. Like I could be the man I thought I was supposed to be. But every time I looked at her, I saw the disappointment in her eyes, and it crushed me. I felt inadequate. Not just in my job, but as a husband. I was failing both at work and in my marriage, and it felt like there was no way out. The more I tried to prove I was worth something, the more I realized how much I was losing in the process. And the worst part? I didn't know how to stop. I thought I had everything figured out, but the truth was, I was spiraling. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being the man I was when I met Emily. The man who was confident, who could see a future clearly. Now, I was just scared. Scared I'd never be enough for her. It was one of those nights where everything seemed to come crashing down. Emily and I had barely said a word to each other all evening. I'd been working late again, and when I finally got home, I could feel the weight of everything hanging in the air. The silence between us was louder than any argument we could have had. I knew something had to give, and I knew it was going to hurt. She was sitting on the couch, looking up at me with those eyes that always made me feel like I was letting her down. I could see the pain in them, but I couldn't figure out how to fix it. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. She deserved someone who could be there for her, someone who wasn't so wrapped up in his own fears and insecurities. I thought, maybe I'm just holding her back. Maybe if I step away, she can find someone who can really give her the life she deserves. But even as I thought it, I could barely bring myself to say it aloud. But I had to. For her. For us. I sat down next to her, and for a moment, I didn't say anything. We just sat there, both of us knowing this moment was coming. Finally, I spoke. Emily, I think it's time we take a step back. She looked at me, the confusion in her eyes quickly turning into pain. What do you mean? She asked, her voice shaking. I couldn't answer her fully. I was already choking on the words. I think we need to end this. For both of us. There it was. The hardest thing I'd ever said. The moment I knew I was going to regret forever. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, stunned. And then the tears started, quiet at first, and then all at once. I don't understand, Mark. Why? She whispered. Her voice breaking. I didn't know how to explain it. How do you explain to someone that you're letting them go because you're afraid you're not enough for them? Because you're afraid that no matter how hard you try, you'll never measure up to the life they deserve? I walked away that night thinking I was doing the right thing, even though everything in me screamed that I wasn't. I felt like I was losing the only thing that ever truly mattered, but I also felt like I was doing it for her. It felt like love in its own twisted way, but deep down, I knew it wasn't love. It was fear. The first few weeks after we broke up were a blur. I threw myself into work, just like I had before. I thought, if I can just keep moving, if I can just focus on getting ahead, maybe I won't have to face the emptiness I'm feeling. At work, things were looking up. I was getting noticed. Promotions came through. I started getting everything I had once thought I wanted. I thought, this is it. I'm finally going to feel complete. But the truth was, it didn't matter. The more I achieved, the more hollow everything felt. I thought I'd be happy. I thought this would fill the void. But it didn't. It only made me realize how much I missed her. How much I missed us. I tried dating other women, but it never felt right. Every time I looked at them, I felt like I was comparing them to Emily, and it always came up short. There was no connection, no spark. It was like I was going through the motions, but the emotional part of me was still with her. And the worst part? I couldn't stop thinking about her. I saw her, sometimes, on social media, living her life, smiling with friends, traveling. And I couldn't help but wonder, is she better off without me? The more successful I became, the more I realized that success didn't mean anything without the person I loved by my side. I had everything I thought I wanted, but it was just empty noise. I started to question everything I believed in. Everything I'd worked for. I realized that I had been so focused on building a life of achievement that I had forgotten to build a life of connection. I had worked so hard to show I was enough for her, but in doing so, I had become someone she couldn't rely on. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe I was never meant to have both, the love and the success. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I just didn't know how to find my way back to her. I never expected it to happen the way it did. After the breakup, I spent a lot of time thinking about what went wrong. I kept asking myself what I could have done differently, and it haunted me. Then, one evening, out of the blue, I got a message from Sarah, an old friend I hadn't seen in years. We'd known each other back in college. Sarah was always one of those people I could talk to about anything. But life got in the way, and we lost touch over time. Now, here she was, reaching out after all these years. At first, I wasn't sure what to expect. She'd heard about the breakup, and she just wanted to check in, see how I was doing. We agreed to meet up for coffee one afternoon. I told myself, it's just a conversation. Nothing more. But as we sat there, catching up about everything and nothing, I realized something was different. Sarah had always been smart, funny, and full of life. But now, she was even more grounded. She had this clarity about her that I couldn't help but be drawn to. The conversation flowed effortlessly. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was really seeing someone, not just listening out of politeness. And as the conversation deepened, I found myself sharing things I hadn't shared with anyone in a long time, about Emily, about how I'd felt during the relationship, and the mistakes I'd made. It wasn't just the casual friendship we once had. Something about that afternoon shifted. We laughed about old memories, but we also talked about our present lives, what we wanted, what we feared. It wasn't like I was looking for a new relationship, but I couldn't deny the connection that was slowly building between us, and as we said goodbye that day, I felt a strange mix of guilt and relief. Guilt because I knew I was starting to feel something for someone else, but relief because for the first time in months, I felt like I was opening up to something real, something that wasn't about work or status. It was about me. It was about connection. Over the next few months, I spent a lot of time thinking about everything that had happened. The breakup with Emily, my career, the emptiness I'd felt despite all my success. It all came into focus. I realized that the success I'd been chasing wasn't really success at all. It was just a distraction. A way to avoid facing the truth. The truth was, I had been so focused on proving something to the world that I had forgotten to build the life I really wanted. I had been so consumed by my need to be enough that I had forgotten what mattered most: being present, being real with the people who truly mattered. When I reconnected with Sarah, it wasn't because I was looking for a way to replace Emily. It was because, for the first time in a long while, I was finally open to just being myself. I wasn't pretending. I wasn't chasing an ideal. I was accepting that I was human, imperfect, and still deserving of love and connection, no matter what my career looked like. It took time, but I eventually reached out to Emily. I needed to apologize, not just for what I'd done, but for what I hadn't done. For not being the partner she deserved. I never expected anything to come of it, but I knew I had to say the words. When we met, I could see in her eyes that she had moved on. She was strong, happy, and had found peace in her life. It wasn't the reunion I'd imagined, but it was healing for both of us. We shared our stories, acknowledged the hurt, and wished each other well. It was the closure I needed to fully understand the lessons I had learned. I realized that love isn't about constantly proving you're worthy. It's about being authentic, being present, and learning to balance the things that matter: your work, your dreams, and the people you love. The lesson I had to learn was simple. You don't find fulfillment by chasing success. You find it by learning to live your truth, to give the love that you receive, and to be present in the lives of those who matter. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally living the life I was meant to live. With Sarah, with the lessons I had learned, and with the peace of knowing that I wasn't defined by my success, but by the love and connections I nurtured along the way. Looking back, I can see now that everything I went through was necessary. The confusion, the pain, the heartbreak, it all led me to a place where I could truly understand what mattered. And it wasn't the promotions, the money, or the fancy titles. It wasn't the idea of being the perfect man, the perfect husband. It was about being real. About showing up for the people who care about you. About choosing to love, not out of fear, but out of understanding and acceptance of who you are. It's about finding balance in your life, not striving for some ideal version of success that leaves you empty at the end of the day. When I started this journey, I thought the key to everything was working harder, achieving more, and proving myself. I thought that's what would make me feel complete. But all that did was make me lose sight of the most important thing: living authentically, being emotionally present, and understanding that no one can do it all alone. I learned that love isn't about being perfect. It's not about keeping up with some standard of success that the world sets for you. It's about being willing to grow together, to face challenges, and to learn from your mistakes. Emily and I weren't perfect, but that wasn't what made our love meaningful. It was the way we connected, the way we supported each other. When I lost sight of that, I lost everything. But in the process of losing, I found something even more valuable: self-awareness. Now, with Sarah, I understand the importance of just being myself. I've learned to stop pretending to be something I'm not. I've learned that my value doesn't come from how much money I make, or how high I climb on some corporate ladder. It comes from the love I give, the respect I show, and the moments I share with those who truly matter. The breakup with Emily, the time I spent rebuilding my life, it wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. but it was necessary. And now, I don't just look for success in the form of money or career. I look for fulfillment in my relationships, in the people I surround myself with, and in the way I choose to live my life. It took losing everything to realize that success isn't just about achieving, it's about living in a way that aligns with your heart, where love and authenticity are at the center of it all. I used to believe that if I was successful enough, I'd feel whole. Now I know the truth: feeling whole comes from the inside. And no amount of external validation can fill the emptiness if you're not living authentically. So, here I am today, not perfect, but free. Free to love, free to learn, and free to be who I really am. And I can't wait to see where that takes me.